Nemesis at Alton Towers is considered by many to be the best roller coaster in all of England, and by many to be the best inverted roller coaster in the world. And it's not hard to see why. This legendary Bolliger Mabillard inverted roller coaster combines powerful forces with a unique setting. And that setting is really what makes Nemesis special. Those familiar with Alton Towers know that this park cannot build above the tree line. Most parks would consider this to be a deal breaker for a thrill park. But Alton Towers has shown their creativity over the years to provide thrills while remaining compliant with local regulations. And Nemesis may be the best example of this. Nemesis has an official height of just 42 feet, or 13 meters, but it has a change in elevation of 104 feet, or 32 meters. How does Nemesis do this? It goes underground. And if diving underground wasn't enough, the ride also has some extensive theming. In the center of the ride is a massive alien wrapped around the station, and many of the trenches are filled with water. Originally, these trenches had blood-colored water, but over the past decade, the water has become clear. And as crazy it might be to imagine a world without Nemesis, this coaster almost didn't happen. Nemesis was the first of Alton Towers' famous secret weapon projects to be fully realized. Despite this, it was known as Secret Weapon 3. So you may ask, what were Secret Weapons 1 and 2? That would be the Arrow pipeline coaster that never made its way to any park. However, Alton Towers creative director John Wardley rode the prototype pipeline roller coaster at Arrow's facility in Utah, and he was not impressed. He found the ride slow, boring, and rough. That was the final nail in the coffin for an Arrow pipeline coaster coming to Alton Towers. So John Wardley and Alton Towers started looking into alternative ride systems. Shortly thereafter, Wardley learned of Batman the Ride, the world's first inverted roller coaster being built at Six Flags Great America by Bolliger Mabillard. Wardley rode Batman the Ride shortly before it opened to the public in 1992, and immediately he knew that was the type of ride he wanted at Alton Towers. Now, this was not going to be easy with the park's height restriction, but B&M and Alton Towers found a way to build Nemesis. And just 2 years later, in 1994, Nemesis opened to rave reviews. And 25 years later, Nemesis still finds its way atop many roller coaster poles. Nemesis was so successful that it spawned a few spin-off rides, but like many sequels, they weren't as good as the original. Thorpe Park received Nemesis Inferno in 2003, a decent B&M invert, but it lacked the unique setting or forces of the original. And Alton Towers opened Nemesis Subterra in 2012, a highly themed indoor drop tower. But this attraction was short-lived and closed midway through the 2015 season. Back to Nemesis, this coaster had been near the top of my bucket list for quite some time. It's exceedingly rare to find a thrill ride as well themed as Nemesis. And for those of us in America, Nemesis has sort of a mythological status to it. It's the invert many of us hear about but rarely get to experience for ourselves. And seemingly everyone who rides Nemesis has had glowing remarks about it. So it would have been easy to be let down by the coaster after hyping it up so much. I had the opportunity to ride Nemesis in 2017, and I'm glad to say the coaster did not disappoint. Nemesis was a complete walk on the day I visited, so I got nearly a dozen rides in this B&M invert. While the back had slightly better forces, I much preferred the front row in Nemesis for the visuals. The terrain use and near misses are what make Nemesis a world-class ride in my opinion. Nemesis begins with a fairly short lift. Remember, the ride has a posted height of just 42 feet. Now, Nemesis doesn't really have a true first drop. After cresting the lift, you bank to the left and travel down the short dip. If you look at this dip in a vacuum, you could say Nemesis has a cruddy first drop. But I look at this drop a little bit differently. As a whole, Nemesis feels like one continuous drop. Each element gradually plunges you deeper and deeper into the ground. This allows the ride to keep building up speed as it goes and maintain its intensity. I'd equate the start of Nemesis to the start of a Mach launch coaster. Much like the launch on a Mach launch coaster, the turn and dip on Nemesis is not meant to be forceful. Rather, it exists solely to supply the speed necessary for the elements that follow. And the elements that follow this turn and dip are exceptional. It begins with a corkscrew. It's extremely weird to start an invert with this inversion, but that's what Nemesis does. This bizarre layout is another reason why I love Nemesis so much. And since this is one of the early B&M inverts, you are whipped through this corkscrew. It feels like one of the corkscrews in the Batman the Ride clones. That's immediately followed by a 270-degree downwards helix, and this is easily the most intense element on Nemesis, and one of the most intense elements on any roller coaster for that matter. B&M inverts are known for having intense helixes where the blood rushes to your feet, but the helix on Nemesis is on a completely different level. The forces are so strong that it felt like my legs were going to explode, and those leg-numbing forces were accompanied by an unavoidable grayout. This turn felt like a stronger version of Silver Bullet's helix combined with Intimidator 305's first turn. This helix is otherworldly. As you start to regain your vision, you then rocket over the station through a 0G roll. And this is definitely one of the best 0G rolls in the world. This element combines hang time with a ferocious whip. And if that's not enough, you also have this crazy foot chopper with the tentacles of the alien creature embedded into the station. That's followed by a speedy overbank. This overbank isn't super forceful, but it will cause your legs to tingle a bit. But what I really like about this overbank is that the second half dives deep into a ravine. It's at this point that I believe Nemesis reaches its top speed of 50 miles per hour or 80 kilometers per hour. It's also worth noting that this overbank can cause you to hit your head if you're not careful. But outside of that overbank, Nemesis is glass smooth, which is incredible considering this coaster is over 25 years old. That overbank is followed by a forceful vertical loop. The train did slow down a bit more than I expected at the apex of the loop, but the pullout really packed on the G's. You then whiz through a tunnel and navigate another overbank turn. This overbank turn is the ride's one dead spot as Nemesis sorta crawled through this element. But Nemesis quickly regained its speed as it dove back down to another trench and emerged into one of the best corkscrews in the world. The train hauls through this corkscrew and offers a whip that most old-school B&M inverts can't even match. Plus, it's an extremely cool visual from the midway, seeing the top of the corkscrew is level with the pathway. After this corkscrew, Nemesis dives through another trench and rockets around one final bank turn, offering one last bit of leg-numbing forces before hitting the brake run. One criticism I often hear about Nemesis is that it's short. With just 2,349 feet of track, or 716 meters of track, it's hard to argue against that. Nemesis is definitely one of the shortest inverts. But this doesn't bother me too much because Nemesis doesn't have much filler. Most of the B&M inverts have throwaway Immelman elements or the mid-course brake run that hurts the ride's pacing. Meanwhile, Nemesis goes pedal to the metal from that first corkscrew onward. The only dead spot is that second overbank turn, but the element is over so quickly that it doesn't really impact the ride's pacing that much in my opinion. So what would I rate Nemesis? I'd give this legendary coaster a 9.5 out of 10. Most of my favorite coasters focus on airtime, but Nemesis is one of the highest inversion-based roller coasters on my personal list. The ride's top-notch pacing, forceful inversions, and countless near-miss elements make it worthy of all the praise it receives. Now, I wouldn't quite call it the most intense invert in the world. I honestly think the Batman the Ride clones are more forceful from start to finish. But Nemesis is not far behind and has a major advantage with its unique layout, terrain use, and theming. The only reason I don't give Nemesis a perfect score is the absence of a good first drop and short length, but Nemesis is pretty darn flawless outside of that, especially when you consider the restrictions Alton Towers had to deal with to even build this world-class coaster. Last but not least, is Nemesis my favorite invert? When I rode Nemesis in 2017, it was. The forces and theming were hard to top. I later rode Montu that same year and went back and forth which coaster I preferred because Montu was a longer ride with comparable forces, but Nemesis had that awesome theming. But then in 2019 I rode Osiris at Parc Asterix, and that coaster became my unquestioned favorite invert. It reminded me of Montu with about a half dozen airtime moments sprinkled into the usual inversion-focused inverted coaster layout. It was really my dream inverted coaster layout. So those are my thoughts on Nemesis, the legendary B&M invert at Alton Towers. Have you been on Nemesis, or is this a bucket list coaster for you? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like and consider subscribing because there will be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for listening.